Hello and welcome to the second of our two-part series running for elective office in Amherst. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Phyllis Lehrer, and I'll be the moderator for tonight's presentation and discussion. The first session focused on nomination procedures, how to get started, and campaign issues, how do you spread your message. Tonight's focus will be on campaign finance regulations and reporting with panelists Jason Tait, MaryAnn Grimm, and Bonnie McCracken. The audience will have an opportunity to ask questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can do that anytime during the webinar. We will begin the Q&A after we have heard from the panelists. If you are watching live on Facebook, I'm sorry you won't be able to ask questions. And this session is being recorded. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our Zoom host, Kathy Campbell, who will be fielding questions and potentially compiling similar questions coming in from the Q&A. Also, thanks to our partners at Amherst Media for covering these events, which will be live streamed and also available for scheduled viewing on local access cable channel 17. The evening is brought to you by the League of Women Voters of Amherst through the tireless work of Joan Rabin, Adrienne Terizzi, Bonnie Isman, Marla Jamate, Janice Ratner, Elaine Berger, Cynthia Brubaker, Trish Farrington, and myself, Phyllis Lehrer. Thanks to all those women who made this informative series possible. In addition to the two-part series, a guidebook is now available on the League of Women Voters website, Amherst, at lwvamherst.org. The League's overarching mission has always been to encourage informed voters and, most germane to our discussion tonight, active participation in government. The full mission statement of the Amherst League of Women Voters reads, the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Our first speaker tonight is Jason Tait, the Education and Communications Director of the State Office of Campaign and Political Financing, a post he has held since 2008. Prior to that, he was a journalist in Massachusetts and in Illinois. Welcome, Jason Tait.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I suppose I'm on at this point. I can, all right, I'm told I get 15 minutes. So I'll just start by saying when you get hired at OCPF, we go through an introductory, we go through a school to teach us the campaign finance law. It takes 3 months. I'm going to try and pack that all into 15 minutes, obviously not, but let me give you the highlights as we go along here. I'm going to start by just giving you a little introduction of OCPF. I'm going to show you where to find your forms and guides. That's very important. And then I'll talk about the 3 most frequently asked questions that I get from candidates who have to file on the local level, like in towns, like in Amherst. So I'm going to start by just talking a little bit about OCPF so you understand where we come from. I don't know if you've seen the headlines, but the state budget's working its way over through Beacon Hill. It's like $47 billion or something like that. Our office, to put that in perspective, is 1.8 million of that. We're a tiny drop in the bucket. There are 15 of us at One Ashburton Place at Beacon Hill, usually. I'm at home right now, I'm in Brockton, but usually 15 of us. So we're small, but we have a big impact because of what we do, which is not bust people for campaign finance violations. What we do is we try to help candidates to publicly disclose their campaign finance activity. Day in and day out, that's what we're about, disclosure. Money raised and money spent in this state, our law requires that that information be put in a form or some form that the public can easily access. And so that's what we do day in and day out. How can we increase disclosure? How can we help people file? And how can we help them fix their mistakes when they do file, which mistakes happen all the time. So, you know, don't freak out if you make a mistake. If you make a mistake, you're just being normal. So that's campaign finance in a nutshell. Let me just mention real quick how our office is formed, because it's very unique in state government. We are nonpartisan and independent. There's no commission we report to. We don't report to the governor. There's no Secretary of State. What happens is every 6 years, 4 individuals get together: the head of the Republican Party, the head of the Democratic Party, the Secretary of State, and a law school dean appointed by the governor. They just happened to get together recently. And at the end of February, they selected a new director of OCPF. And drum roll, it's another city clerk, Mike Sullivan. Many of you know him. He ran the office since 1994. And this commission to select the director picked Bill Campbell, the Woburn city clerk, who just started on Monday. So I have a new boss, and I know him because, you know, as many of you know, I work with city and town clerks every day. And he was a city clerk. So I worked with him as a city clerk, and he's a great guy, and I look forward to working with him. Bottom line is, I wanted to show that we are independent and nonpartisan. The Republicans and the Democrats have to agree on someone, and they agreed on Bill Campbell. He's going to be a nonpartisan sort of referee for the next 6 years, with the ultimate goal of helping people to disclose their campaign finance activity. At this point, let's go to our website. We're all about disclosure at OCPF, 2,700 different committees filing with us. But to do that, you need to be educated and you need to know where to go. On the local level, same deal. You're going to be raising and spending money. You need to know the rules, and you need to know how to file your reports. So let me just go show you a few highlights at our website. I'm going to share my screen. Just a moment. Do you see the OCPF homepage here?
Yeah.
It says OCPF with our phone number here. All right, I see someone nodding. This is the front page. If I'm a local candidate, I'm going to run for a school committee in Amherst. The first thing I want to do is organize, and I want to get my campaign finance reports available, and I want to get it all ready. I'm going to go down. There are many ways to find our forms, but I'm probably going to go right down here to where it says clerk support. And I'm going to click there. And if I go to clerk support, and we focus on clerks, but candidates can go here too, because this is the information that you'll need. There are various tutorials that I can watch to get an idea on how to report my campaign finance activity. I know a lot of candidates, they might go to these and watch them and then copy and paste the URL and email them to all their family and friends who are going to help them out for the election. So these videos are helpful. There are also guides here for local candidates that would be helpful. It's, you know, this thing's 22 pages long, I believe, or 12. I shrank it, but almost everything you need to know is in this guide. So if you have a real boring evening sitting by the fire, you might want to print this thing out or call it up on your iPad and give it a read. But to get started, I really want to go to this forms page. And I'm going to click this M101 form. This is how a committee organizes. You print off this form, you fill it out, and you hand it into your town clerk, and voila, like that, you're officially organized. You would think maybe it would take a little bit more, but all that's required is that this form be filled out. You fill out the candidate information. In municipal elections, it's nonpartisan, so you can just put not applicable here or something like that. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I do want to mention treasurer. The treasurer cannot be the candidate, and it cannot be a public employee. It also cannot be a minor. Your officers have to be 18 or older. So usually, if I'm running for the first time, it's probably going to be my wife. I'm probably going to ask her to be my treasurer, or if I'm not married, maybe my brother or my parents. Usually, family members or friends become treasurers, which is fine. We get that question all the time. But you would fill this out. The candidate is usually the chair. And so you print this out, you sign it, you hand it into the clerk, and just like that, you're a committee, a political committee. The other form I want to show you is the campaign finance form, and that's right here, the M102. This is the form that as a candidate in your town, you're going to file 8 days before the election. and 30 days afterward. Your town clerk should send you the reporting dates. So if I've never been a candidate before and I'm on the ballot for this spring, then I am going to put in the reporting date that is given to me by my town clerk, which is going to be January 1st until 18 days prior to the election. My first report is going to be filed 8 days prior. Since I'm new, it's going to be 0, my ending balance from the previous report. All the money I raised between these dates, including my own money that I put in, and then all the money that I spent during that reporting period, and then my ending balance. The front page is done. I still need to sign the thing, but then I am required also to put in the details. This is where you put in your receipts or your contributions, Schedule A, fill in all these columns, the expenditures you make for your lawn signs and your mailings, and maybe people are holding signs for you on the street corner on a cold April day. You can buy them coffee and donuts. Use your committee debit card and you put that there, you know, Honeydew or Dunkin' Donuts, $80. Purpose, right here, purpose, coffee and donuts for sign holding volunteers. Something like that, just so it's clear to the public. Over here, your in-kind contributions. These are not as common, but these are things of value that are not money. And then liabilities, debts owed. Usually it's the candidate. Let's say I'm running for school committee and I figured, you know what, this is going to cost $2,000 to win this seat if I can win. I'm going to put my own $1,000 in. I put it into the account. I report it as a contribution from me to the campaign. And then I also put it as a liability, a debt owed from the campaign to me personally. We always recommend you put it down as a liability because at some point in the future, you might have enough money to pay yourself back. So you can keep that there on liabilities and pay yourself back someday. The point being is you're going to file 2 reports for this election, 8 days prior and then 30 days afterward. And then if you win, you'll file a year-end report in January 2022. Or if you lose, but you have a balance or liabilities, you also file the year-end report. So it's a cycle of if you appear on a ballot, you file a report, then file the year-end report if you're a winner or you have a balance. Always knowing, by the way, that you can call OCPF with questions or your city or town clerk. I hate it when, sometimes people do make mistakes that rise to the level of our legal department having to get involved. I go to all the legal meetings because I'm the media spokesman and I have to know about these things. And I always feel bad when people make mistakes that get them in trouble when it's the type of situation where if they had just called, if you just call us or email us, then you would not have been in that situation. So if there's ever a time when you think you're in a gray area, never hurts to go to ocpf.us. At the top of the website, I run the front page of the website. I'll always have this phone number and this email. Right now during this pandemic that's going on, best way to reach us is to copy and paste this into an email, this email address, send us an email, and then the person who monitors that account will send it right to the appropriate attorney. I want to show you one other thing. I know most of you are local candidates, maybe running for selectmen or school committee. Sometimes you're going to have a fundraiser and maybe you've invited all your friends and family to give you $50 or something. One little tip that local committees can do is they can go to our website and they can click this tab right here, search campaign finance data, our most popular tab with journalists, political consultants, and candidates who want to look up certain types of information. Let me show you this type. So let's say I'm a selectman candidate in Amherst. I've invited 50 of my neighbors and friends and family, but I kind of want to know who else in my town gives money, tends to give money. Maybe I forgot someone. Maybe there's a big donor in town who I know, and I'll be like, hey, can you send me a $500 check? So I'm going to go here and I'm going to choose Amherst. Where is it? There it is. And I only want to know maybe the big money donors. So I'm going to type in 1,000 here. 1,000 is the most an individual can give to a candidate in a calendar year, even for selectmen or school committee. And you'll see there's a list. And I'll say, oh yes, of course. I'm friends with Sarah Ross. She gives $1,000 to people. I'm going to ask her to attend my fundraiser, so on and so forth. And you'll see all sorts of different people. You see some UMass folks. and others who live in that community. They give the maximum, and these are the candidates on this side. It's just one way to use our information. But as you can see, there are so many different boxes that you can put information in to see how people are giving. And so you can manipulate the data any way you'd like. And then if you look down here, there's an Excel or a PDF, and you can create it and send it to your team and say, hey, look at this. Can you guys call some of these people if you know them and maybe ask for their support? All sorts of different ways that you can use our data for your purposes. I'm starting to get toward the end of my 15 minutes, so I want to real quickly talk about the top 3 questions that I get as the liaison to city and town clerks. So that means that basically all calls on the town level get filtered to me, and so I answer these almost every day. So I'm just going to let you know so that you can, so that maybe you don't have to call me in the future. Number 1. I'm only spending out of pocket. Do I have to file a form? Do I have to file a campaign finance form for this election? This is the rule. If your name appears on a ballot, you must file a campaign finance report. Even if I spend nothing, if I'm just like, you know what, I'm gonna go door to door and shake some hands, I still have to file a campaign finance report, just telling the public is I didn't spend any money. So it'll be easy. 0000, sign it, hand it into the clerk. So anyone who appears on the ballot must file the campaign finance report 8 days prior and 30 days afterward. The second most frequent question is, I need to open my bank account. Can I use my personal social security number, or do I need an EIN? Most banks require an EIN. It's not our requirement, but it's something the banks that many banks require. Because it's such a frequently asked question, I try and keep it at the very top of our website. So here's our welcome tile. Right here is the EIN for the IRS. If you need to get that EIN, I highly suggest clicking here for our instructions on how to get an EIN for a political committee. Otherwise, you're going to end up down some crazy rabbit hole on the IRS website. So I would suggest clicking there on our website to get your EIN, please. And as you see here, we have the link to the IRS website. And then finally, out-of-pocket expenditures. On the town level, there are many times where someone just like, I only need to buy lawn signs and boost a few Facebook posts. That's going to cost me $800. I'm not even going to bother opening a bank account. I'm just going to spend out of pocket. That's okay, but there's a certain way you must report it. When you spend out of pocket $500 on lawn signs, you're a $500 donor to your campaign. So you put $500 on Schedule A on your campaign finance report. You also need to disclose the expenditure to the lawn sign company. So on Schedule B expenditures, you put a $500 expenditure to the lawn sign company. So 500 in, 500 out, your books balance at 0. But if you want to get paid back, you also put it as a liability on Schedule D. So money in, money out, and then the debt owed to the candidate. That's how out-of-pocket expenditures are reported. So that's the big 3. If you know those 3, then most of your questions likely will be answered through the guides and calling your town clerk. But again, please give me a call if there are any situations where you think it might be a gray area and you need a little guidance. And I'm happy to take your questions at the end of this Q&A.
That was incredible. Thank you so much. And now we'll hear from 2 residents, MaryAnn Grimm and Bonnie McCracken. Each will have 5 minutes to discuss their experiences in the role of campaign treasurer. We'll begin with MaryAnn Grimm, who has lived in Amherst since 1977. She has served as a treasurer for school committee campaigns, local political action committees, and a state representative campaign. She is currently treasurer for a school committee member, a local political action committee, and a state representative. Thank you, MaryAnn Grimm, and welcome. Oh, you have to unmute.
There we go. Okay. I don't know if I have 5 minutes worth of things to say, but I'll do the best I can. So as Phyllis says, I've been a resident of Amherst since 1977. I've raised my 3 kids here, and I'm currently raising my granddaughter here. And I started out my volunteer treasurer life by being treasurer for nonprofits. I was treasurer for many nonprofits over the years, and then I switched over to the realm of politics, and I really enjoy serving as treasurer for campaigns. I think the biggest message that I have is that you don't have to understand how to do calculus or high level math to be a treasurer. It's, you know, balancing your checkbook. If you can balance your checkbook, you can be a treasurer. You have to be organized and a little bit detail oriented. And if you can keep track of money coming in and money going out, you'll be okay. And as Jason said, there's a lot of rules to know, but the OCPF website is a wonderful resource. When I first started as treasurer for campaigns, I spent a lot of time on the OCPF website, watching videos, reading the campaign guides, and asking questions. I have sent lots of emails to Jason over the years, asking questions, you know, how do we do this? And how do I do that? And how do you report that? So, and I want to echo what he says, that OCPF is there to help us as treasurers. They want us to do it right. And they are a great resource. And so I think anybody who's nervous about it because of these rules should not be nervous. There's a lot of resources out there, and OCPF is there to help us to navigate. Maybe a couple of things that I would say, if somebody is going to be a treasurer, a couple of really down and dirty details in terms of being a treasurer. One of the resources on the OCPF website is a contributor limit chart that you would want to have, so you can keep track of how much people can donate and how much organizations can donate. So you want to look for that on the OCPF website. Maybe I won't get into a lot of details. Maybe I'll wait and see what the questions are. But I really want to encourage people that you can do this, that we need, you know, there's a lot of elections, a lot of races coming up this fall. I think over 20, 23, 24, I don't remember how much there are, but a lot of races. So a lot of work for treasurers. And so if you're at all interested in being a treasurer, you can do this, and I encourage you to do it.
Thank you, MaryAnn. And now we're going to hear from Bonnie McCracken, who has lived in Amherst for 43 years. Her most recent political position was as a fairy godmother and advisor to a congressional campaign in the 1st Congressional District in 2018. She has run for office and worked on many statewide, congressional, and local campaigns. She has served both as a campaign treasurer for a school committee and housing authority candidates. She's a former treasurer of the Amherst Historical Society. Welcome, Bonnie McCracken.
Thank you. I think MaryAnn just stole everything I wanted to say. So I concur with what you say. And like MaryAnn, I also did treasurer work for Boy Scouts and everybody else in town. I have to admit now I'm a public employee and no longer able to serve as a campaign treasurer. I'm a federal employee and subject to the Hatch Act. And so I just want to share some of my experience, because I had to actually close out a campaign account before I started my position with the Department of Interior 14 months ago. So there was a real rush and lots of phone calls to Office of Campaign Finance to make that happen. I've attended lots of trainings, both partisan and nonpartisan training, not just to be a candidate, but how to run elections and also treasurer work. And just like MaryAnn said, you know, detailed oriented, you like Excel spreadsheets, you like to collect data. I think those are the key skills. But I started to do treasurer work for campaigns because I knew that was a way that I could give back to area campaigns, and I could juggle it around my work schedule. And so I found it, you know, I couldn't always pick up and go door knocking. And, you know, this was my way to give back to the candidates. One important thing, when you go forward and you buy signs and you buy campaign literature or calling cards or business cards, is to remember always at the bottom, you must include the words paid for by the committee to elect, or however you call your campaign, people for John Smith or Harriet Smith. You must include that language. The other thing that really surprised me in doing local campaigns was how many checks I was getting for $49.99. I was like, what? What's wrong with 50? And when you're reporting for a town election, you only report people's names and their addresses if they give $50 or more. So a lot of people in town don't want other people to know who they're supporting. And so you'll get checks for $49.99. So I'm sure you'll see that all my campaign reports I've ever filed have these odd set numbers. And I always got a kick out of that, and took me a while to figure that out. So those are a couple of things I wanted to point out. Yeah, and the town clerk's website, besides the campaign finance, is also a great reference. Go in, you can see all the campaign reports I filed, MaryAnn filed, and believe me, at 11 o'clock at night when I was preparing reports, they were a great resource. He showed me how to, add people's names or do, compile my sheets. I think the other thing to be aware of is that as long as a candidate is in office, they have to keep their committee open. And I wasn't aware of that. I served for a housing authority candidate, and she was in office for 6 years. But you can also change your treasurer. If your treasurer leaves or moves, you can fill out a form and you can bring a new treasurer on, a treasurer will leave. So I think, it's not forever. And there is ways around it. I know it was already brought up. I got a lot of questions about, I'm going to self-fund my campaign. I don't want to raise money. I'm just going to put in my own money. And thank you, Jason. Even though I'm not a campaign treasurer now, or I do work with a lot of new candidates in the area, not just Amherst, because I serve on the Democratic State Committee. I have a question for Jason that often comes up, is because we're a university town, people use their university email addresses. And I always told people I cannot communicate with you through your UMass email, and people didn't understand that. And when I explained you're using state funds for a political purpose, and and everybody says, oh, nobody will find out. And I'm like, yeah, well, I will. I know I'm violating campaign finance. So maybe Jason can speak to that later. But, it's not unreasonable. We only filed 2 reports for local candidates. It's monthly for state legislator races. So it's a little bit more involved. And putting together finance committees, if you're the treasurer, have somebody, maybe pick up the checks at the post office and deposit them, see how you can also share the load. If you're a state employee or federal employee, you cannot ask for money. So you should have somebody always at a campaign event with you to ask for money. So when you introduce yourself, give your message, you'll always have somebody with you who will then can do the ask for the candidate, because won't be violating any campaign finance laws as a public employee. So I'm going to say, I think I've said it all. And I'll turn it back to everybody else.
Thank you, Bonnie McCracken. We do have some questions already. One of them to all of you is in-kind donations. Does the treasurer need to record services rendered to the candidate by a volunteer who's also a professional in the field? For example, if a volunteer is a professional marketer and writes the candidate's website or flyers, should a dollar value be ascertained and included under in-kind donations?
Yeah.
It depends.
Okay.
there are marketing firms out there and they have dozens, maybe hundreds of employees, and they spend their days creating websites and graphics and different things like that. If your friend says, hey, I'll do it for you, and they're doing it on the clock while at work, that's an issue. But if your friend comes home and says, during the day, I'm a professional marketer, in the evening, I'm going to volunteer for you, we consider that it's something of value, right? And that's what I said. It's anything of value that's not money, but there is that personal services exemption. You know, some people, the best they can do is probably hold a lawn sign for you. They can volunteer and do that, like me. I'd sit there and hold a lawn sign. But you may have some friends who have skills in different areas, and they can volunteer for your campaign on their own time, and you do not have to report that as an in-kind contribution.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. MaryAnn, any follow-up to that?
No, I think Jason covered it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Now, to all of you again, are candidates limited to giving $1,000 to their own campaigns?
They are not.
Oh,
MaryAnn, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I'll take that. So candidates can donate unlimited amounts of money to their campaigns. So they are not subject to the $1,000 limit per calendar year. They can donate as much as they want to their campaigns.
okay. Any other? And something I wanted to ask, can a candidate accept money from out of state? For example, if I have a cousin in Milwaukee, can that relative send me money? And how would it be noted? Is it get noted differently than any other campaign contribution?
Nope, you just have to put a WI in the state field. Yeah, people from out of state can give. The restrictions are on, well, people who can give are US citizens, green card holders,
Okay.
and that's about it. Those individuals can give to your campaign, even if they live in California or Wisconsin.
Good. And what if there's no candidate, but an organization is filing with the intention of endorsing and assisting a few candidates? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a political action committee. A
Okay.
political action committee is when two or more people pool their resources to support or oppose candidates. There are 250 political action committees organized with OCPF, and then a few on the local level, on the municipal level. But these are groups primarily that raise money at $500 a pop from individuals, and then they can make $500 contributions to candidates on a local level.
Okay. Now, sometimes campaigns make purchases, but don't pay the invoice until it comes due. This means that an advertising purchase for an advertisement that appears prior to the election and influences voters may not get paid or reported until after the last pre-election reporting period is passed, defeating the purpose of reporting as far as transparency goes. How can this be addressed?
Well, we have the Schedule D, which is liabilities. It says liabilities basically
okay.
unpaid bills. And exactly the scenario you just gave occurs from time to time where you get the good or the service, but you haven't paid the bill yet. You stick it on Schedule D. That way the public knows that you intend to pay it at some point because they saw those ads and those lawn signs.
Okay, now this is a question again for you, Jason. Given the population of Amherst, we are technically not required to file through OCPF for municipal office. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you talk about the relative pros and cons of going through OCPF or just using the town forms?
There are mostly pros and very few cons for using OCPF's software to create, print, sign, and file your reports. It's called Reporter 7. And what it does is you enter the information, your receipts, your expenditures, your in-kinds, and your liabilities. You type it in. It saves to the internet cloud, whatever that is. And when it comes time for you to file your report, you hit the print button, you sign it, scan it, and to your town clerk. If you have a moment, I can show you exactly where to find the registration information on that.
We definitely have a minute. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Now, let me ask a question to Marianne and Bonnie. When you do your reporting, do you do it on paper or do you do it electronically? And do you use the state or do you use the local town form?
Well, the Reporter 7 that he's talking about is fairly new. It was not, I don't believe it was available last year when I filed my last report. So MaryAnn, but I mean, these are fillable, all the campaign finance forms are fillable PDFs. So I do type them out on the computer and I keep my numbers on an Excel spreadsheet. So it's just a cut and paste from, you know, the spreadsheet to the filing. But I mean, I've done online filings as a candidate, and, you know, it's always been easy enough. And I'll let MaryAnn speak to the most recent filing.
Yeah, MaryAnn?
Yeah, I'll have to say, I love the Reporter 7. I use it for everything. Once I discovered it, maybe it's got to be 2 or 3 years ago. I used it for, well, of course, I have to use it for the state rep filings, but I use it for all the local filings because it's so easy. And if you have a lot of donations that are coming in, you can just enter them as you're going along, which is, I would really recommend if you have lots and lots of donations, lots of checks coming in. If you use the Reporter 7, you can be entering the check information as you go along. You can be entering expenditures as you go along. It automatically alphabetizes it for you because that's the way it has to be. And so, you know, it's your 8-day before election report is due and you're not scrambling the night before. If you've been entering that information all along, you go in there, you hit print, you print it out and you're good to go. So I absolutely love that system. And that's the only system I use now, even for municipal reporting, is that Register 7.
Now, let me ask Bonnie and MaryAnn again. Do you get more checks or do you ever get cash donations?
I never accepted cash. Okay. And so now, you know, it's more online through ActBlue or Square or any of these online systems, so that people set up their websites or their Facebook page so that people can donate directly online using a charge card. But checks are fine. Also.
Yeah, I also try to stay away from cash. You can accept cash donations, but they're just more work to keep track of them. And you know, sometimes you might have a house party. And
that's what I was thinking of.
And the candidate wants to put a basket out, you know, for people.
Yeah.
And I always say, you know, you have to have somebody either sitting there at the basket or put a sign up saying no cash, because if somebody is at the house party and they drop a $20 bill in, you have no idea who that came from. You cannot keep that money. You have to have a name and address to offer all the donations. And so if you have a $20 bill and you have no idea who gave it, then you need to donate that money to a 501c3. You can't keep it.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Now, is there any kind of email content a candidate or campaign committee can send to a public resource address that is a public school or college address? I think you were talking about that. Some candidates have argued that saying only that they are running and to check out their webpage is not fundraising if they don't ask for money. Please explain how we can explain this to people clearly. I have just told them to scrub the list for everything public resource, but is that too strict?
The person asking the question has obviously read our advice, which is scrub your list and remove all government email addresses. The campaign finance law has restrictions on what public employees can do as far as soliciting and receiving, but also soliciting or receiving in buildings used for governmental purposes. And the Supreme Court 100 years ago determined that an invitation sent into a government building is a prohibited solicitation in a government building. Fast forward, 80, 90 years, now we have this email. Our office is applying the same rule to email. And so we say, don't send anything to public email addresses, even if it doesn't have fundraising, although technically, it may not be prohibited. We just say, just scrub all your lists of public email addresses. Use your Yahoo, your Gmail.
But what you just said about public buildings, we have public buildings that are used for events. Can a candidate hold a meeting in the Bank Center, the police station, the libraries when they were open? And can they ask for money there?
Yeah. The, sorry for jumping in all the time, Bonnie and MaryAnn.
No, this
It
is
seems like
critical.
legal questions that that might require some of the precision that we have in our advisory opinions. I'll just let you know, I took this call once. I have many examples, but someone called me up and said, Jason, I want to file a complaint against Bernie Sanders. Like, oh, okay, why? What's going on? He said, you can't use public resources for a campaign purpose, right? I was like, yeah, that's right. He said, Bernie Sanders just gave a huge speech at the UMass auditorium. And, you know, what are you going to do to him? And I had to say, okay, no, I get it. You're right. Public resources cannot be used for campaign purposes. However, there is an exception, and that is what we call equal access. So if Bernie Sanders can use the UMass auditorium for a campaign speech, no fundraising, you're right. You can't fundraise in a building used for governmental purposes, but he can hold a campaign event there. Then Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and the rest of them can do the same under the same terms and conditions. Where do we see this most often? It's usually like at the senior center, where a candidate is running for office and says, you know, I want to show up there. I want to set up a table with coffee and donuts, have my literature, and just allow seniors to come up and talk to me if they want about campaigning, about the issues. Can I do that? We have no problem as long as everyone's treated the same. Or the senior center director could say, we don't want any of that stuff going on. We're cool with that too, as long as everyone's treated equally.
Interesting. You're right, because candidates do like to meet seniors a lot because they vote. Sorry.
That's right.
What restrictions are there for public employees who run for office? And again, what about the events held in public buildings such as the Bank Center or even the public schools? I think we sort of got that, but what about the restrictions for public employees who run for office?
So as the public employee, I'll take this phone call, take this question. We can't ask for money and we can't campaign during, office hours. Like I work 8:30 to 5 and I can't do anything campaign during that 8:30 to 5. And you can't raise money. And that's why I said that, when you're putting together your campaign, you should really have a finance committee and designate 1 or 2 people to always travel with the candidate to do the ask. Now, a candidate can't even pick up a telephone, especially in their own home that they own, and ask for money, even to, Sally who lives next door. They have to have somebody else do that. So it's best to make those phone calls on a neutral place that's not owned by the candidate and paid for with public funds. And so the candidate can get on the phone and say, oh, hi, Sally, I'm running for office. This is what I'm running for. This is my message. And then end it, I have Beth sitting here with me and she wants to ask you something. And so I would then pass the phone to Beth and Beth will go on and say, hi, I'm a member of Bonnie's finance committee. And, she's running for office and it costs lots of money. Could you donate, $50 today? And so you play this tag team. And so that's the best way to handle it when a public employee. I know as a federal employee, I can't run for a partisan office. It could only be a nonpartisan a town
MaryAnn,
office.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. There's another question then about public buildings and public employees. What if a spouse, you're at a house party and the candidate is a public employee, but the spouse is not? Can the spouse make the pitch and ask for money, even though if it's in their house?
Not in their house.
We've had opinions on this. There are sometimes maybe someone's a school teacher in the public schools, that's a public employee.
Yeah.
And maybe the wife is a banker. And the public, the wife who's a banker is really involved with politics and wants to have an event at her home. But can she? Her husband is a school teacher.
Yeah.
Our office has said that they may, but the school teacher shouldn't be there. He should go out for the night and maybe go watch a game at the local bar or something like that, but should not be involved in the fundraiser at that home.
Even if it's their own home.
Correct.
That's interesting. Okay. Now, both treasurers. Is it hard to be a treasurer? I mean, you seem to say it's detailed oriented and, you know, you can do it at your own pace and you just fill in the things. I mean, can anybody do it?
I think so. But then again, you know, I ran my own business for 30 years and had to keep track of a bottom line. And it's a natural thing for me. I love to fill out my spreadsheets. I mean, some people don't like to keep a checkbook or balance it. I mean, so I don't understand why nobody wants to be a treasurer. And like I said, I found it to be, I didn't have to knock doors. I didn't have to talk to people. And I felt as though it was a really good way to take my skills and contribute to the community and to candidates in the area. And from there, you know, just having these basic knowledge of campaign finance rules was very helpful when I was working on other campaigns, and, you know, could share this knowledge with other candidates and their committees, and prevent them from, you know, getting in trouble.
MaryAnn?
So I would agree with Bonnie. She and I sound like we're very simpatico. I love my spreadsheets, and I'd rather sit at the computer with my spreadsheets than be out talking to people. I have to admit, I'm a little bit of an introvert. But I do think that anyone can do this. I mean, people may self-select. I mean, some people, they can't balance their checkbook. I mean, some people just aren't good with numbers. But like I said, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do this. You do have to have some facility with numbers, but I think most people are able to do this job. And you don't, you know, we're talking, Bonnie and I talk about Excel spreadsheets. And some people that might be off-putting, you know, they think Excel spreadsheet, I can never do an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know anything about Excel. And that's fine. You also don't need to know Excel to do this job. You just need to be organized to do it. You know, the campaign finance forms are not Excel spreadsheets. So you don't have to know how to do Excel, but you need to be a little bit detail oriented and organized and have the time, because it does take time to keep track of all this. So I think most anybody could do it.
But you can also share the tasks. I mean, somebody can keep the list, somebody can collect the checks and make the deposit, and then somebody is the one who compiles the form and signs their name. And as you know, Sarah Barr said last week, you know, many hands make light work, and it makes it all doable for everybody. It just have clear roles on the campaign as you go forward. You know, that this person will help the candidate do the ask, or this candidate will make deposits. I mean, just make it clear. And, you know, there's only one treasurer and there's only one name on the checkbook, and that's the treasurer.
Now, the thing is, you said about Excel, for somebody who's not that computer literate, could they just put everything in a notebook and then type it into the forms? Would that be?
I still like ledger paper. I still love to buy graph paper. I mean, I still like that format. So yes, you can do that.
Okay.
And you don't even have to, Phyllis, you don't even have to type it. You can handwrite those forms. I mean, if you go onto the Town of Amherst website and go through and look at some of the forms that have been filed in the past, the finance forms, there are many that are handwritten. So you don't even have to type them. They can be handwritten.
Because when I was looking at the forms that Jason put out, it's almost like income tax. You just fill in all the lines until you get to the end.
Yeah.
Right?
Got it.
Yeah.
Right.
So just keep going until you get to the bottom.
But you can print out those forms from the website, and then fill them in by hand.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to use a fillable PDF form.
Okay. Another question. Could you talk through how to retroactively record expenditures? For example, paying for a website or domain name to get it set up before filing and pulling papers. Part B is, what is the order there? Pull papers and then file with OCPF, file with OCPF and then pull papers?
Yeah,
What's the answer?
Well, many candidates, they begin to raise and spend money long before they pull nomination papers. Want to get prepared. If you spend money at all or raise money, we hope that you organize a committee first before doing so. But sometimes we understand that someone may have got that website going, or maybe got some handbills or something like that, and they hadn't organized yet. Doesn't matter. It's all about the reporting period. January 1st until 18 days before the election, any activity that happened between that date, doesn't matter if you filed your 101 in February and you accidentally spent money in January, we still want you to take that info and put it into the report.
Okay. And could you talk through how to pay people who work on the campaign? Stipend, hourly? What is the best practice and how do you recommend going about the process? Have you paid people when you had campaigns?
No,
Oh,
no, I paid a campaign manager when I
Oh.
ran for state rep. But usually local races, people don't get paid. Treasurers can get paid. And some of college students sometimes get stipends. The best thing in all the campaign trainings that I've taken, they've said, oh, just give people some titles. And especially your students who are working, because that gives them something to put on their resume.
yeah, right. MaryAnn?
Give them titles and buy them coffee and donuts once in a while. So when your campaign committee gets together to discuss things, probably now it'll be by Zoom, but hopefully someday we'll be all sitting in a room together again. I look forward to that. But buy some coffee and donuts for your campaign staff when you get together, and then
Okay.
and then save the receipt and put it down as an expenditure on
Of course. Can a public employee have a donate button on their website or Facebook page? I guess, Jason, that's for you and everybody else.
Yeah, so Bonnie spoke a little bit about public employees who also run for office. A public employee who does run for office still cannot solicit or receive for his or her own campaign. That's why they have to have the committee on the side to do all the fundraising for them. To set up the fundraisers, to actually send out the invitations, make the phone calls, all of that. When it comes, and this is a law that was written again in 1873 or whatever it is, now here we are in this world of Facebook and websites. And our office has said that your committee, if you're a public employee and a candidate, so a school teacher running for selectman, then your website should appear to be the Committee to Elect Jason Tait website. It shouldn't be in the first person, like, hi, I'm Jason Tait, vote for me, that sort of thing, if that donate button appears. Well, we do have our candidates who do this, and they're public employees and candidates. And we say, just send us a link to your website. We'll take a look at it real quick, and we'll tell you where to tweak it to make it comply with the campaign finance law. But that is correct. If you're a public employee and a candidate, you don't want there to be any sort of first person language on that website. And yeah, that's it. I mean, we've had some recent examples, but we can move on probably.
Now, Bonnie and MaryAnn, did you have donate buttons on your websites when you were campaign treasurers?
It's on the campaign website. There's you usually donate buttons on the campaign website.
Okay.
Yeah, but up until last year, I was self-employed and I didn't run into any issues as a public employee. So yeah, I wasn't breaking any campaign finance laws by having donate. But yeah, we always had to donate. I mean, I first ran for office back in 2011, and it was harder to get a donate button on your website. And we did PayPal, and it was it's almost like pushing paper and pencil. And we couldn't have debit cards, and we could only have could only use a check. And the check had to have a special stamp on it. And, things are just so much easier now with campaign finance and reporting, and even how you spend your campaign funds.
Okay. Now, can a candidate hold a GoFundMe campaign?
No, our office has determined that the GoFundMe mechanism does not allow donors in the committee to collect the required information at the time the contribution is made. So we don't care what vendor you use, but some of them, if you aren't able to get the name and address, occupation and employer, and then a statement confirming that the money they give is their own money, then you can't use it. That's why there are so few vendors used. In Massachusetts, we have PayPal, which has been mentioned, ActBlue, WinRed, Pyrex, only a few vendors tend to be able to collect the required information. And so that's why we don't allow people to use, we say, don't use Venmo, don't use GoFundMe, because these vendors don't allow you to collect the information you need.
And you have to do that for the filing reports. Yeah.
Yes.
Can a public employee assist a treasurer with deposits and tracking donations if they don't actually ask for the donations?
We don't really want public employees handling the funds at all, like making the deposits or anything.
Okay.
They need to be hands off on that.
Okay. Now, both of you had experience with banks, local banks with the EIN. Was that a difficult process?
No, it just takes a few days. You file online, and then they issue your EIN number, and then you take it to the bank. I think the hardest part is that the EIN number is under the candidate's name, but the checkbook is all under the committee's name, and the treasurer controls it.
So I thought that the EIN is obtained under the committee's name. So if it's the committee to elect Jason Tait to school committee, the EIN is issued to the committee to elect Jason Tait, and not given to Jason.
Okay.
Individual.
But it's usually the candidate that files. I've always had the candidate file for the EIN number.
Okay. Jason, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to
I
interrupt.
was just going to say that we're really hands off on that. We don't have any rules about EINs. It's really between the banks, you, and the IRS.
Oh,
But
okay.
we do have that memo I pointed out that shows you in 7 steps the exact way to get the EIN that most banks require.
So is there a fun part in being a campaign treasurer?
Fun part? Yes.
Fun part. I mean, you're doing this and you've done it. So
It's as Bonnie has said a couple of times, it's a way to give back to the community. I enjoy, being a treasurer, you're part of the campaign committee, and you're part of the strategizing and working to get your candidate elected. So I find that really fun. I really enjoy being on campaign committees and working to get our candidate elected. So yeah, being a treasurer is fun.
And I've always met great people. I work on statewide campaigns a lot. So I just enjoy the people I get to meet along the way. Sounds like a song, a cliche, but yes.
because you meet a lot of people on campaigns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've
Well,
actually met neighbors I don't know while knocking doors, but or even at campaign events and fundraisers.
well, I'm sorry to say we have reached the end of our hour. So I'd like to thank you very much for such a wealth of information, Jason Tait, MaryAnn Grimm, and Bonnie McCracken. And I'd like to invite all of you, maybe not Jason, we're going to have a next league program is on redistricting, and that will be April 29th at 7 p.m. You can register on our website, lwv.amherst.org. Thank you, and thank you all for joining us. This has been just wonderful. Love talking about money.
I've had a great time. So thanks for
Thank you.
inviting us.
Thank
You're
you.
fabulous.
It was nice to
Keep up
see
the
you,
good work.
Jason, somewhat in person.
You, Bonnie. Thank you.
And any questions, they can call you, right?
They
Sure.
can.
Thank you.
Thank you.